Hello guys, so this is my first YouTube video, so please don't mind me being awkward in front of the camera because I really don't know how to be in front of the camera. But I just thought that I would make a small video regarding the books I've read until this point this year. So sorry if I'm a bit rough and sorry if I'm a bit awkward, but hope you enjoy this video. So to start off, this year at least has been productive. I'm a final year student living in India, and with all the exams and stuff, I'm happy with the amount of books I have read this year. And those are good books. Surprisingly, all the books I have read until this point have been amazing and have really enjoyed reading them. So without any further ado, let's just get into it. So the first book I read this year was actually a book that I carried on from December last year, which is the Savage Detectives by Roberto Bolaño. Of course, when Roberto Bolaño's name is like pervasive throughout the booktube and the literature community, because I have been hearing about this book so much that I started reading this book as soon as I got it, because usually when I buy a book I let it simmer in my shelf for a few days or a few months and then I get to it. But this book, I couldn't hold off my excitement and I just started reading this as I got it. So yeah, this book has lived up to my expectations. I can truly say that this is one of my favorite novels that I've ever read, and I haven't read much Latin American novels. I have 100 Years of Solitude somewhere upon my shelf, which I still have to get to, but this book might be one of my favorite novels of all time, because I really like novels which are non-linear, which don't follow a strict structure, and which are radical. And radical is a word that fits so perfectly to this book, because this book, so let me just give you a synopsis. So you follow two authors who are on a search for another poet who's kind of like a recluse, a Thomas Pynchon of that world, who just disappeared after writing some radical poems, and these two authors are searching for her. And it's not so straightforward, because you don't get all the information in linear manner, but it is through a set of interviews with people that those two authors have come across. So you start from, I believe you start in 1975 and you go till 1996, I believe. So it's all through, to 1996, and it's all through a set of interviews with different people who recount their experiences with those two authors. And it's a very indirect mode of storytelling, and I love it. It's so fun because of that mode of storytelling, and the ending is awesome. It's really radical. It paints a picture of a world where everything is so free-spirited and people are so free-willed and enthusiastic about things to do. In this case, it's poetry and literature that the people are enthusiastic about, and it has a lot of it also, as classic Bolaño style, it also has a lot of dark subject matter, but it's still such an endearing novel to me that after I read it, I had to read parts of it again, because they were so good. So this is a novel. I think this is a perfect introduction to Bolaño. I recently bought 2666 by Bolaño, which I plan to get to, which is called the quintessential Latin American novel, and this is a perfect starting point in my opinion. So yeah, I love this book. So next up, the book I read was Judith Butler's Gender Trouble. Now, I always wanted to get into queer and gender studies, but I really didn't know the entry point, because it was behind a veil and I couldn't get any information, or I was too lazy to find out. But I heard a lot of things about Judith Butler, who is a preeminent gender theorist, and book Gender Trouble seemed accessible to me. So I just picked it up, and it was a breezy read. I completed this in 3 days, and don't let that fool you into thinking that it has nothing, but it is a book that is so revolutionary. In the span of just 3 days, so many notions about gender and about the way we operate about gender changed, because this is not just a standalone book in the sense that Judith Butler is not putting forward her own theories, but she's reacting to a set of thinkers. So few of them are Foucault, Freud, Wittig, Kristeva, and she's reacting to these authors and putting up our own theory about gender, which is amazing because it essentially squashes this uh, normative heterosexual gender while also criticizing the homosexual movement in the sense that everything operates within a heterosexual matrix unbeknownst to anybody. So Butler argues that only when we rid ourselves of an essential, foundational heterosexual notion can liberation really be possible in sexuality. She argues that modern liberatory sexual politics are at their end rooted in firmly entrenched heterosexual politics, which are which do more damage than they do good. So yeah, Butler. This book is a perfect starting for Butler. I'm excited to read more books by her. I think there's another book, Who's Afraid of Gender, and I want to read that so bad. Yeah, Judith Butler. Briefly, are Madness and Civilization by Michel Foucault and Pedro Páramo by Juan Rulfo. Now, this I don't have much to say about this book because I don't think I can do any good service by explaining this book. This is so weird and awkward that you need to read it to experience it. Whatever I say will just dilute the essence of this book. So pick this up. Apparently this book influenced the writing of Gabriel Marquez, who wrote 100 Years of Solitude. And the reason I bought this book that it had a foreword by Susan Sontag, and I just thought this must be a good book because I trust Sontag's taste, and I was shocked to find how famous this book was and how underrated at the same time this book was. So yeah, Pedro Páramo by Juan Rulfo. I hope I'm pronouncing this name right. Please don't mind if I don't. My next book is Michel Foucault's Madness and Civilization. Again, I can't talk much about this book because this is such a unique and radical book that it really questions our conceptions of history and about how madness emerged. When Foucault is investigating the starts of the founding of the modern psychiatric institution, he's not talking about the way people first built those institutions or about who built them first. Foucault is essentially digging up into the psyche of a society and culture, which is nothing but the 18th century, the 17th century European world, where madness itself was encountered first in its very unique form, and the ideas around madness that are very relevant today started emerging. So people started shifting from a spiritual and a devotional idea about madness to a very scientific and a pathological view of madness. So I'm really simplifying it, but this is a book you have to read if you want to get introduced to the writings of Foucault, because in my opinion I have read 2 other books by Foucault, and I think this book is a perfect introductory book for Foucault, because this is one of his earlier writings, and it's still it's something he's very well known for. It really illuminates his method about how he goes about doing things and how he goes about packing his really radical ideas into a neat bundle. So yeah, this is a book that you have to read to understand how modern conceptions of madness emerged through a process of discourse and engagement with all the other sciences and through cultural mechanics. I read the science fiction book, which I rarely read. Science fiction is a genre that I really have to explore, but I'm really lazy to do it. The next book is Neal Stephenson's Snow Crash. So Neal Stephenson is a well-known science fiction author, and his Snow Crash is really something that is considered the primary text of cyberpunk and science fiction after Neuromancer by William Gibson. So I like this book? Yes, I like this book. It is really engaging. It has I can't believe it was written in 1990s, because it basically foreshadows Roblox, Reddit, and all those kind of things, and it really uses the word metaverse, which is a reality now. And so we follow a hero. We follow a guy named Hero, who is a freelance samurai and a pizza delivery boy, and about how there's this kind of a cyber drug, which is known as Snow Crash, which not only has its effects in the metaverse, but also has its effect in the real world. And at one point, I believe the things could have been tied better into a neat story bundle, but there are a lot of threads to follow here. Neal Stephenson is handling a lot of things. He's handling modern cyberpunk technology while also handling ancient Sumerian myths about goddesses and gods and viruses. So this surely has a very interesting plot device and very interesting premise, but I kind of lost interest in it at the end, but I still managed to get through it. It's a really good book. I would suggest it if you want to get into science fiction. It's really engaging, really new, and really not even close to being run of the mill. It has everything you can ask. It has ancient history, it has modern technology, it also has major. It also has bad guys who are uh, searching for you because you know something they don't, which is one of my favorite tropes in literature. So yeah, Snow Crash by Neal Stephenson. The next book I read was Jean Le Carre's The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. So this is my third book by John Le Carre. I read his Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and The Honorable Schoolboy, and I then came back to his previous works and I picked this up, and I love his writing. I love how different his novels are, because when you envision a spy novel, you have a set of ideas that a novel should go like this, that it should have so and so ending, that it should have so and so characters doing so and so things. But Jean Le Carre's spies are the most realistic spies you can actually come across, which is a bit practical, because he himself was a bit related to the spy world in Britain. So this, you follow your main character George Smiley, but no, George Smiley is not the main person in this book. It's Alec Lemas, and this book is so good. Don't get into this book with an expectation about a whole spy thriller where you have guns, where you have James Bond-esque stuff. It's not that. It's exact opposite of that. It's more bureaucratic in nature. It's more about those little lives of spies, that about spies and about people in the security service who really are humans at the end of the day. It's about their loves, their memories, their insecurities, but also about international affairs. In this, we are dealing with finding out a mole in communist Germany, and it's amazing. It really talks about the political situation of that time, and also puts forth a story so engaging that you will forever remember. The ending is one of my favorite endings of all time. Every ending in his novels are so good, because at the end everything suddenly starts to make sense. Because while you read his book, there are a lot of convolutions, there are a lot of names, and you get confused for a while. But at the end, everything really starts to make sense about how the way it is. And his characters are very human, so very memorable. And yeah, they're not perfect. They're not. That's the most important thing in his novels. Spies. James Bond is always perfect in my opinion, but George Smiley and Alec Lemas are not perfect, and they're very human. So coming to the next book I read this year, we have this, An Instance of the Fingerpost by Iain Pears. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, but yeah, this was a good book. I got this book for my birthday, and I was really itching for a good mystery slash thriller novel, and yes, I got this. This book is not the run-of-the-mill novel. Um, the title is the weirdest title I came across, but it just starts to make sense at the end, and it's beautiful when it starts to make sense. So to give you a quick synopsis, so this book is about an event that takes place. I don't want to spoil it to you. The blurb reveals the event, but I advise you to go into the book without knowing the event. So there's something happens, and you have kind of a Rashomon effect, where you have this four people tell the same story but different perspective. I know this is overdone in literature or cinema, but this is really really thrilling, because this is not set in the modern world. This is set in in 17th century Oxford. So it is set in 17th century Oxford, and it includes a range of characters, range of different amazing historical characters who are kind of entangled in this mesh of events that they can't seem to get out, and you as a reader are also struggling to figure out what's the truth, and it is only revealed at the end. So even the accounts are very interesting, because there is kind of because every narrator in the book is of course unreliable. So you suddenly come across some revelations that are very thrilling and very shocking, because you have just heard opposite things. So this is amazing. It's also good study about human nature, and about how we as a society seem to ostracize a set of people. We seem to ensconce ourselves in a class divide, and we essentially try to be safe and rational behind a wall of education. So this really brings out the hypocrisy, the double standards of 17th century Oxford, England, and it's amazing. It's amazing. Get this book, An Instance of the Fingerpost. And I haven't heard much about this book. It was just a random find. So yeah, I think this can be called an underrated book. Yeah. So coming to the next book. Next book is an American novel by Wallace Stegner, Crossing to Safety. So I have heard about Wallace Stegner. He's a really famous. He's a really popular author, and I decided to pick up this book. And I really didn't know that while buying this book that this was one of his last novels. Like, he wrote this book when he was 75 or 78, and I found out this fact after I read the whole book, and then it made perfect sense that a book like this can only be written by someone who is looking back on life, on all the friendships they had, on all the relationships, on the memories, on the love, hate they had. So it's kind of semi-autobiographical, but it's a you can read it as a fictional novel. It's about our narrator himself is an old man who is talking about his past, where he made friends with another couple, where he and his wife made friends with another couple who are similar but who are a bit rich and a bit socially higher. But the friendship is true. The friendship blossoms, and you get to know the warts and all of friendship of this kind. It's not just flower and roses and perfume, but it's also this very human faults, human flaws, and human way of making friendships, and the struggle to maintain them, the struggle to sustain them throughout your life. It's beautiful. The ending is this novel really shocks you for the way it ends, and it's really moving at the end. At the end, the story is really sad and moving and heartbreak, and more of heartbreak, but it's still such a hopeful portrayal of friendship and life. By the way, coming to the title, the crossing to safety. So in the epigraph, there is a poem which is by Robert Frost, which Wallace Stegner uses as an inspiration for the title. So the poem goes: I could give all to time except what I myself have held. But why declare the things forbidden that while the custom slept, I have crossed to safety with? For I am there, and what I would not part with, I have kept. So this kind of distills the essence of the book into this simple, neat poem by Frost, which really does make a lot of sense after you read this novel, and it's so hopeful. So it's sad. I'm not denying it's sad, but it's so hopeful that when you that a person who might be 70 or 75 now, reminiscing about their old friendships and treating their memories as like this contrabands that they have sneaked past the airport security and really bundled into a neat mess that they can keep forever and that they can reminisce about. It's really beautiful. Yeah. And it's set in 1920s, 1930s America during the Depression and during the crisis and stuff. Yeah, we have another non-fiction book, which is a history book, which is The Horde by Marie. I'm not even going to try to pronounce her second name, which is obviously French, Favereau. The Horde by Marie Favereau. Mind my pronunciation, but I've always been interested in the Central Asian part of the world, Central Asia, because Mongolia as a country, we hear a lot about Mongolia through figures like Genghis Khan, but rarely do we have that country in our imagination as a unified whole. So this book is a history of that area, about how the Mongols, and I really need to put a disclaimer, this is not exactly about Genghis Khan. This is about a branch of the Khan family, about Genghis Khan's family, his son Jochid Khan, who branched off from the main kingdom into his own kingdom, which is called the Golden Horde, which ruled parts of Central Asia, western part of Central Asia and Western Asia, present day Europe, Poland, etc. So this book is a history of those people and how they have been very important in shaping modern history, and at least Asian history. You rarely read about these figures in textbooks or in your run-of-the-mill textbooks. So this has been a really revealing read, because you get to know a lot about these people who are kind of nomads. So when we think of a kingdom is like a sedentary empire where we have where we have a city, where we have a geographical city that has strict boundaries. But these people were nomads. They were nomadic kingdoms. They were always on the move. They had camels. They had these tents. The cities were not exactly brick walled. The cities were more like felt tented, and they had this lot of internal power dynamics. The books goes deep into some really political power dynamic, Game of Thrones stuff. There's a lot of assassinations happening. So if you can sustain if you think a book on history of Central Asian or a book about political maneuvers of a 11th century 20th century kingdom can hold your attention, and this is a book for you, because this is filled to the brim with good details about that period of time, and really uh, changes your beliefs about what Central Asia was, and how the present day Russia, China, and all those Mongolia have in depth to these guys, the Horde, the Mongols. Yeah. So Mary Favereau, the Horde is an amazing book, and I enjoyed it. I quite enjoyed it. I read this in a week span. It gets a bit detailed in between, but that too is very interesting. So yeah, pick this book up if you are looking for a history read. And by the way, I'm really sorry for the amount of changes in the angles of the video, because I really have to keep checking whether the video is getting recorded, or else I would just be doing this for waste. So yeah, we are down to our last 4 books, so I won't be troubling you for a while. So the next book is another Foucault book. It's The History of Sexuality, Volume 1, and this book is one of Foucault's most well-known, well-read books, and it is amazing. It deals with the concept of about so it's part of a 4-volume series where Foucault examines the origins of the present day notion of sexuality. So in this, he makes clear his method about what he's going to do and how he's going to do it, and that in itself is so refreshing and so radical that just by reading this 150-page book, so many ideas about sexuality were squashed, and new ideas sprouted in my mind. In this book, so Foucault is basically talking about how we define sexuality, how he will go about inquiring its origins about the modern notion of sexuality, and the last 50 pages or so are the most life-changing, mind-changing, motion-changing pages I've ever read, because they really show you how sexuality is totally tied to a notion of power. We take sexuality or heterosexuality or homosexuality or the general notion of sexuality to be a very foundational notion to our society, and hence we think it's something immutable, unchangeable thing. But Foucault argues against that. He argues that the notion of sexuality we have is a very modern one, which is very different from something that the Greeks had, something that the medievals had, and he inquires about how so I forgot, the main notion of this book is Foucault is arguing against the notion that sex is repressed. One of the most touted statements in modern liberatory politics is that sex is repressed, and that we have to go against authorities to unrepress sex or make sex free. But Foucault argues that that is not the case, that he doesn't tell that sex is not repressed, or that authorities or bureaucrats don't impose restrictions on sex. He doesn't argue that, but he argues essentially that our notion that sex is repressed is itself a part of notion that builds sexuality in the present day. I know I'm doing a bad job explaining it to you, but that is the scale, or that is the level at that is how much complex this book is about, because the subject matter it deals with is not something so simple. This is such a monumental task, and I can't believe that Foucault actually went on with it and did so much in it, and no wonder it's so revolutionary. All these notions about sex and how power begets sex, and how sexuality helps in furthering the effects of power. So yeah, this is a book that you have to read to understand it. Really amazing. It is difficult read, but it's still a very life-changing read. I know I'm using these words, radical, life-changing, motion-changing, a lot, but every book in this bunch is really that. So yeah, The History of Sexuality by Michel Foucault. I can't wait to get my hands on the volume 2, which I think deals with the sexuality of the Greeks and how they conceived of sexuality. Wow, the next one is Meghaduta of Kalidasa. So as I'm an Indian, I read Sanskrit. I have learned Sanskrit, and I don't speak it fluently, but I can read and understand it. The shlokas of Meghaduta. So Kalidasa is a starter for anyone who is wanting to read Sanskrit or who is in Sanskrit and who wants to explore Sanskrit poetry, because Kalidasa is one of the most acclaimed poets in the Sanskrit sphere, and you will really understand it why after you read Meghaduta. So the premise in Meghaduta is very interesting. So there is a Yaksha. Yaksha is a mystic mythological being in Hinduism. They are something like not centaurs, but they're a distinct class of beings, yakshas. So this book, the protagonist of this book is a yaksha who has been exiled from his home by the lord of the yakshas, Kubera, and now 6 months into his exile, he wants to find out how his partner, who he left in his hometown, is, who his female lover, how she is, and the only way he can access her, the only way he wants to tell her that he's fine and he wants to know how she is by sending a cloud as a messenger. So the Meghaduta means the cloud messenger. So this is so interesting because the whole book is nothing but the yaksha narrating to the cloud how to reach his home and how to reach his partner and what to tell her. So this is filled with geographical details. So the yaksha is exiled to the south. The his partner, I believe, is in the north. So he has to send the cloud in a specific path. So he keeps narrating all these locations, all these details about the mountains, and while he describes these mountains and rivers, Kalidasa really paints a very beautiful picture, because Kalidasa doesn't let things stay normal. He compares the movement of the rivers to the movement of women, the movement of sun. So there's a really beautiful shloka that I want to read, which I'll read the translation. So basically in this part of the book, the yaksha is telling the cloud to go a specific way and not to obstruct the path of the sun in the morning, because then the sun will be angry. Why? Because that is the time when the tears of offended women are to be wiped off by lovers. Quit, therefore, the path of the sun quickly, for he too, returning to remove the tears in the shape of the dew from the lotus face of the lotus plant, will be not a little happy with you, obstructing his beams. So this is really fun way how the sun is a kind of a lover who is wiping the tears of his beloved, who are nothing, who is no one but the lotus plants, and the tears are nothing but the dew, the morning dew, and the sun is envisioned as this lover who is wiping out the tears of his beloved's face. And then there's a warning to the cloud that don't obstruct his path because he will be angry with you. It's really beautiful. The book is filled with such metaphors and such allegories, and it's fun, and you will know why Kalidasa is hailed as the greatest Sanskrit poet ever. I have other books by Kalidasa which I plan to get into. So yeah, Meghaduta of Kalidasa, amazing read. It took me a while. It took me 5 months or so, because I was reading the Sanskrit part and I was also reading the English part. So yeah, it's worth it. It was worth it. So get down to our last two books. This is a non-fiction book. The next one is In the Name of the Nation, India and its Northeast by Sanjib Baruah. Just as I was interested with Central Asia, I was also interested in Northeast India, because as a Southerner, I'm from South India, and when I think about Northeast India, it's part of India, it's essentially part of India, but it's also very distant exotic land that I hear only when people go on vacations to that place or when something violent happens there. And I don't really know much about that location, and I wanted to know what's the deal with Northeast. And this book was so instrumental in changing so many notions I had about Northeast, and it broke my heart about some truths it revealed about the current political system and the current policies implemented in the Northeast, and how people there have always been on the edge ever since India's independence, and how its connection with the Indian mainland is very tensed, very strained. So I believe everyone around me every Indian around me, at least in the South, has this kind of a in their collective imagination, they have Northeast as kind of this distant exotic spheres, and so they don't really talk about it much or know about it much. But this is a book by a Northeasterner, Sanjib Baruah, who is, I believe, a professor of political science, a professor of political science, and who tells the story about how Northeast came to be and how Northeast, the term Northeast is itself a very loaded term, and about how um, the states in the Northeast, which are Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Mizoram, Nagaland, how these states themselves are so fractured and have each history is so painful, and the present situation is not any better. So this book questions the government about its current policies, and also really ends on a very questioning note about what can we do. Like, it almost seems that we are powerless to do anything, but still there is some hope, and I hope things get better for Northeast. I'm really not doing this to paint a very sad picture of Northeast, and it's one of the most beautiful places in India, and of course people are happy and thriving there. But I think we need to acknowledge the harsh histories and realities of some situations in our country before we can go and praise their location or geography or their culture. It really is a disservice not to do that to those people. So yeah, India and its Northeast is Sanjib Baruah. Last book I read this year, which I completed 2 days ago or 3 days ago, was The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner. So I have been itching to get to Faulkner for so long, and finally I made up a mind to get his book, The Sound and the Fury. And this might also be one of my favorite novels ever, because it's so unique. So William Faulkner is known for his long sentences which have no punctuation, no comma, no punctuation, no rhythm. They surely have rhythm, but they have no breaks. So there are these long sentences that just go on and just so fragmentary that it's almost kind of beautiful. So in this book, Sound and Fury, you follow, it's non-linear. I'm surprised at the structure of this book, because there are 4 chapters in this book. 4 chapters, each chapter is only lasts a day. So they are told each chapter is by a member of the Compson family. This family is from the south, from Mississippi, and basically they're crumbling. This family is crumbling. So each chapter is from the perspective of one member of the household, and it's amazing. It's amazing how heartbreaking this novel is, and also how revolutionary this novel is. This really puts forth this whole, and of course Faulkner is one of the forerunners of the southern Gothic movement, and it's filled to the brim with these characters who are very harsh and self-centered, and also incredible racism back in the American South. But it's also also a book essentially about human nature, about how families disintegrate, and how people really are fed up with each other. It gets very infuriating at the point, and Faulkner's writing is the best writing there ever is, because even while he's being totally incomprehensible and totally awkward, his writing just manages to strike a chord within you that you want to keep reading and don't want to just put the book away. It's amazing. I think it's a little over 250 pages, and it's a good read. It's a good read, and I want to read his As I Lay Dying next, and his short stories. It's a really amazing author, Faulkner. I really love him. Yeah. So yeah, I have read a total of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 books. Didn't get bored with me talking about these books, and actually maybe I motivated you to buy some of these books and check them out. So yeah, thank you. Let me know in the comments what do you think of my video. Bye.